I do greatly appreciate all of these breeders and all of the work that goes into all that each of you do. Our next presenter I did not know of, and I'm very excited to hear from Dr. Worthington, who is with the University of Arkansas. She's also going to be presenting on selections of upcoming varieties from her breeding program there at the university. Dr. Worthington.
Thank you. Clicker here. Okay. All right. Thanks very much for having me, y'all. I am excited to be here talking in the peach session. I'll start with a little bit of background. Let's see, is this working? Click. Or... Okay, I'll just move it this way. So a little bit of history about the Arkansas fruit breeding program. It's actually quite an old program. It was established in 1964 by Jim Moore. He came back to Arkansas from working in the USDA in Beltsville, Maryland. And he established breeding programs for a lot of different crops, so strawberries, apples, blueberries, grapes. Muscadine grapes was added, and peaches and nectarines. So we're most well known for our blackberry program at Arkansas, and so that's where people really know about Arkansas fruit breeding, but we also have active programs in peaches and nectarines. So Dr. John Clark took over program leadership from Dr. Moore in 1997 after working as his graduate student and technician, and then I came on board in 2016 and I took over for Dr. Clark, but he's been continuing to work there. He just retired, so he's been leading the blackberry program, and it's been a really terrific opportunity for me because we've had really nice continuity, kind of the opposite of what Senia was talking about, where she had a 25-year gap where nobody was in there. I had a lot of opportunity to overlap with the previous breeder and learn from his experience, so that's been really helpful. And now I'm leading all of the different fruit programs that we have. Thank you, sir. So where do we work? We work at the research station in Clarksville, Arkansas. The site was originally chosen due to its proximity to a Gerber baby food plant in Fort Smith, Arkansas. It's a really high chill environment. You know, we get 1,000 chill hours every year, no matter what. So that makes it a bit of a challenging environment to assess chill, but most of our material is much lower chill than that, and that's evidenced by some markers that we have from Dr. Gassick, as well as performance that we have in trials that we run with advanced material in Hope, Arkansas, down by Texarkana in the south. That's an environment more similar to like South Carolina in terms of chill. We have really hot, humid summers, get a lot of precipitation, and we grow the best bacterial spot in the country. So we have a lot of bacterial spot, and it's an excellent selection environment for that. It's also a beautiful mountainous location in the foothills of the Ozarks. So there you get the overview of the beautiful station we work at. So we started out as a canning peach program back in the 60s. That was the industry there in Arkansas. There was a big canning peach industry. And we have a bunch of releases for canning peaches, some of which you can still buy from Cumberland Valley and different places. So those are options for us. But the canning industry shifted. It makes sense. You know, Arkansas is not the greatest place to grow canning peaches, you know, for organic baby food, considering the cesspool of diseases that we work in. So we shifted towards fresh market in the 1990s. At the time, there were a lot of different public and private programs in the Southeast, more than there are now, and they were all focused on standard acid, yellow, melting flesh peaches, because that's the bulk of what the industry does. So Dr. Clark and Dr. Moore decided that they wanted to focus on everything that wasn't that, you know, on white peaches, nectarines, everything else. We can argue about whether that was a wise decision, considering it's like 5% of the market, but that's the decision that was made. So we have been working on kind of everything but the standard yellow melting flesh peaches. The foundational germplasm for our program came from Fred Huff and the Rutgers program, so we really have a lot of overlap in the kind of germplasm we have with that Rutgers program now, things like Gloria and Messina coming out of there that are offered by Adams County. We got a lot of variation for different flesh types, acidity levels, colors, and flavors. We're, of course, selecting in Arkansas. We are interested in adaptation to that growing environment. Bacterial spot resistance is a major area of focus. Here you can see kind of what a California nectarine looks like when it's grown in Arkansas in terms of its bacterial spot. We get a lot of foliar symptoms as well. We're interested in late bloom, of course, things that don't get hit by cold, and earlier and later maturing varieties. We're also interested in, flavor and storability, post-harvest handling, slow softening in particular. Got that picture of me squeezing something that's ultimately a melting flesh peach, even though it is, the slowest melting thing I've ever seen. Unfortunately, it's also really ugly and high acid white, so it's not getting released. But performance and replicated yield trials. So what I want to do now is go over a few recent releases that we had come out in the last 5 years, as well as an upcoming release that we hope to make this coming year. So Effie is a nectarine that we released in 2018, and Whitewater is a white peach that we released in 2020. A little background about Effie. We've had a series of nectarines that have come out over the years, 6 nectarines to date. You can see that we have a variation here in terms of the flesh type. We've got some that are freestone, as well as most of them are the clingstone non-melting flesh, and that's what people are looking for in a nectarine for the most part, is that clingstone non-melting flesh, because you can eat it a little bit more like an apple, and they really hold up well in storage with that kind of flesh. We've got a variation in acidity level, and as well in flesh color, a range of yellows and whites, and ripening dates. So Effie is a mid-acid white that was released in July 16th. I say mid-acid. To me, it's always been kind of classified by us in the low acid category, but when you actually look at the acid data, it's quite a bit higher than the rest. I don't find it to be as insipid as some white peaches and nectarines can be. As a red-blooded American, I like a high-acid yellow peach, but it has a better balance, and that's because it has extremely high Brix. So it was named for Effie Gilmore, who was a beloved member of the Arkansas fruit breeding team for 32 years. The whole family worked there. Her husband Stanley and her son David is retiring this year after working for us for 30 years also. And she was a big white low acid peach fan. So that's what it was named for her for. The bloom date is pretty comparable to the other nectarine cultivars that we have, around March 20th on average. The Lord knows that varies from year to year. We had an interesting opportunity for midwinter survivability during the dormant season in 2021. Y'all may have recalled the news when they had that Arctic vortex and everybody's pipes burst in Texas. For us, we didn't have the pipes burst as badly, but it got extremely cold. It was negative 15 Fahrenheit. It was brutal. I didn't go outside for a week, but it was a very interesting selection environment for us, because we had material that ranged from having 100% of normal flowering to things that hardly had any flower survivability at all, that they're just the buds never broke. They didn't have an opportunity to get killed off in the spring. So this one had actually very good survivability. Senya was kind enough to run some of her chill markers for us because, like I said, we have a terrible time assessing what the chill might actually be, and it did fit into that 600 to 850 range. So I think it's something that I wouldn't risk it in South Georgia, but in South Carolina and North Carolina, it should be adapted to those regions as well as like Central Alabama. It's performed well at the Southwest Research and Extension site with lower chilling also. We don't see things like tips on it, so that's positive. The vigor of the own-rooted seedling was really low, but it's done quite well when it's budded on Guardian and Level rootstocks. Tree health ratings have been really good. It seems to do quite well in terms of bacterial spot. I've never seen serious symptoms on the fruit, even on really bad years, although we get leaf symptoms on virtually everything in a bad year. I will say it tends to get brown rot pretty bad. Whatever that resistance is, it doesn't have it, So that is an issue that we have. It's consistently harvested about 7 to 10 days after our other nectarines, Bowden and Amori Sweet, about July 16th on average, so maybe 2 weeks before July Prince for us. Yields are quite good, and the size is quite good. You know, we had come from a mostly berry breeding program, and so we had people taking grams rather than millimeters for diameter for a long time. But it's consistently for us 75 millimeters or larger in terms of its fruit size. So quite good for a nectarine, and probably has something to do with that late season ripening. Really high blush, a pretty looking fruit, looks like an apple on the tree. It's a beautiful, gorgeous fruit. The bricks on this thing are out of control. Over 9 years, we had a 16% average bricks. So it's really nice, good tasting fruit. And again, I think that's how you get away with having a higher acid level and still it being perceived as a low acid, but not bland. Really nice aromatic flavor. And it has a distinctly crisp, non-melting flesh texture. I think people can get turned off when they hear that non-melting flesh because of the association with those kind of canning peaches that can be a little rubbery. This is a real crisp, non-melting flesh type, so it is an experience a bit like eating an apple in terms of its eating quality. So now I'll shift over to whitewater peach. That's our latest peach that we released in 2020. We have a series of 6 white peaches that have been released, with varying ripening dates and variation in the flesh type too. Some of these are the clingstone non-melting flesh and a peach, which is probably less popular for folks. This one is a slow softening type. We also have a variation in acidity level. Whitewater would be, I would say, a true low acid type, very low. Its date of ripening for us is June 27th. So really for us, the main thing driving the release was quality in an earlier white peach for us. I mean, not early May, but earlier than our other releases. The flavor, it's low acid. It's got like a nice, delicate white peach flavor. The bricks has been comparable to the others. Something that is consistently about a 12% bricks for us, and a quite low acidity. It is about 86% blush. You can see it gets to be a pretty good size of fruit for that early season. Really attractive, clean white flesh with very little red in it. And it's got that slow melting flesh texture that will soften when fully ripe, but holds for quite a bit longer. Especially for us, it's been the standout in terms of holding flesh firmness early in the season. A lot of our stuff that is slower melting tends to be later in the Arkansas program. The post-harvest storage potential has been comparable to our other slow-melting releases. White County is probably our best-known white peach, so it's comparable to White County, which is ripens about 3 weeks later. But it's outperformed older cultivars like Loring and Red Haven, so it holds up quite well. The flowering date is a little bit earlier than the others, 3 to 7 days before the other peach releases from our program, but comparable to Souvenirs, a yellow peach from our program. The ripening date, like I said, is June 27th. And again, the markers suggest that this has a chilling requirement comparable to Effie in that 600 to 850 hour range. So again, should be adapted to areas like South Carolina, North Alabama, North Carolina. This one actually, it was disappointing to me because we released it in 2020, and then the next year we had hardly any fruit on the trees because it did quite poorly in terms of its bud survivability in that really, really cold spell. Now, I hope that we don't see negative 15 very often, so hopefully this will be a non-issue, especially for my muscadine program. Let's see. The disease resistance seems to have, again, moderate fruit and leaf resistance to bacterial spot. It's not a standout in the way that some of our others are in terms of their resistance, but nothing gets released from the Arkansas fruit breeding program unless it's got pretty good resistance, considering the amount of pressure we have. The vigor has been good. For us, the real problematic disease on this has been bacterial canker. We've had a lot of issues with bacterial canker. I don't know if that's just based on the years of establishment, that we had a hard time with a real old field there and some southwest injury, I think, going on those trees. But that's been a struggle for us with this one. So now moving on to our latest release that hopefully will be released this coming year. It's A662 clingstone nectarine, and tentatively, as long as the lawyers agree, I'm going to name it the Ozark Mango. So I call it the Ozark Mango because I think it has this kind of distinctive orange flesh on it and a really exciting flavor. So that's why we have released it. It's a non-melting flesh, standard yellow nectarine, so standard acid, and it's a bit on the early side. You can see on here Bradley nectarine that came out of our program and was released in the year 2000. It's pretty similar in terms of it's also a non-melting standard acid yellow that ripens around the same time. The reason that I have decided to release 662 after hemming and hawing, because it was selected in like the year 2000, it's been around for a long time, is that it's just got consistently great flavor. This is the one that we all fight over and the grad students want to know when it's ripe on our farm. So we all go and pick it, and again, that's why I'm calling it the Ozark Mango, to highlight that it's got a really good, exciting flavor. The bricks are about 14.5% over 17 years of data collection, so that's a pretty good average. Really, it's the highest of our yellow nectarines. Effie's the only one that has higher than that. It has a really high acid level, but it's not perceived as too tart by anybody that I know, because I think it is that high bricks balances it out. Really good peachy aromatics. A major retailer that is located also in our home state did a variety trial with some consumers, and this one consistently won out as a favorite. It's got a good acid-sugar balance, like I said. The downsides to it is that it can be a bit small, 70 millimeters diameter. I mean, that's still pretty good for a nectarine, and I think that's acceptable to people, but we do have a lot that are bigger, and we're pushing hard on the size, so this isn't a standout for us for size on a nectarine, but I think it's within this acceptable range. About 68% blush over the years. It's an attractive fruit. It's got good finish for a nectarine. They always have some struggles, but we see good resistance to bacterial spot. Rarely do I see cracking. I have some that look practically parboiled after it rains, and it's not a big issue that we've seen here. Overall, the post-harvest has been good, comparable to our other non-melting releases. The tree health is good, and the crop load and yield comparable to other Arkansas cultivars. It's been looked at for many, many years, and it consistently crops. One thing that I thought was interesting from the marker data, that Cynthia's marker said it was less than 450 chill hours, but I find it a little bit difficult to believe because the bloom date is very average for us. The bloom date, March 18th, pretty standard for us, and it made a crop even despite that negative 15. So even though those markers are suggesting a low chill requirement, I tend to think it probably, it's 75% accurate, right? So it could be an inaccuracy there, but we haven't tested it in a lot of low chill places outside of Texarkana where it does well and it doesn't have the tips, but it may be able to be used a little bit lower. It'll be interesting to try that out and see. So we're excited about that new release coming, and there's a lot of exciting material. It's something we've always kind of struggled with, that we think we have really exciting peaches and nectarines coming out of the Arkansas material, but the hype and the sales isn't everywhere it has been, like the blackberries or the grapes. And I'm trying to do a better job getting the word out about our program and the materials that we have, because we are a little bit far away from the epicenter of the industry here, on the Atlantic coast. And so it's difficult to do some of the communication around the varieties. I think there's a lot of exciting material, particularly if you are somebody who's selling, you know, at a roadside or a pick your own operation, that sort of thing, to have that variety, to have some nectarines, to have some white peaches, I think is a good option, or a farmer's market, to have something else to show to your consumers aside from just a yellow peach. You can buy Arkansas fruit peach trees at Cumberland Valley. They're offered there. We also have Greenleaf Nursery in Oklahoma as a licensee. And we've had some material in testing, including Effie and Whitewater with Brandt's fruit trees in Washington State, although those are probably not on the right rootstocks for this area. But we're always interested in adding on new licensees as well. So if you are a propagator and you're interested, particularly for the home garden or small growers, you know, please talk to our commercialization director, Parker Cole, and we will work with you. And we have YouTube videos and more information about all of these varieties, one-pagers about them, on our website. If you were to Google Arkansas fruit breeding, we've got a wealth of information there on the website. And you can also email me at mlworthy@uark.edu with any questions, or contact me now. And I'd like to thank all of our crew that works at Fruit Research Station, as well as my group of grad students and station director and Dr. Clark. With that, I'll take any questions.
We still have plenty of time for questions, so please, anybody for Dr. Worthington.
Yes, Dr. Gosick.
Just a remark for the 662. That's the collaboration between our two programs. I have the material where that's apparent.
Okay.
Yes, and it's a similar situation. The chilling is not high, but it obviously has a high heat requirement that's higher. That's why it blooms later. And we have some selections that we selected out of these, and that mango flavor is the trademark for it. It's really, really good.
There we go. Another vote of confidence for 662, the Ozark Mango. But yeah, I mean, that's the dream, to have something that has a high heat requirement and a low chill requirement for the Southeast. So that's what we hope to produce.
Any other questions for Dr. Worthington? I was really interested. I'm actually getting more and more hungry for that first peach of the year. Having 3 pucks in a row about all these new varieties, so I'm pretty excited about tasting some of these, especially the Effie and the other nectarines. So I hope everybody else has any questions. Yes, sir.
This mature trial is South Carolina or Georgia?
We have trialed some of the material in Alabama, and I put some in a trial in Sandhills, although I haven't received any results from the Sandhills guys on what they have done yet. You know, I feel like I get a little bit...
North Carolina Sandhills?
Yeah, that he put in a variety trial a couple years ago.
That's the same with mine. So next year, this year, they're going to...
We'll get our data back soon. But yeah, we haven't put any stuff into Georgia or South Carolina trials. I'd certainly be interested in doing that.
Have you seen any instance about just the skin cracked variety?
The nectarines? Yeah, you know, certainly cracking is an issue. I think particularly we have some really early ones that we had released as, Westbrook is a really early variety, and that one cracks terribly if it rains. It kind of gets like the skin kind of peels off like a parboiled tomato almost. And we've seen a fair amount of cracking with Bowden and Amori Sweet too. I have not found cracking to be as problematic on that 662, nor have I found it to be a problem on Effie. On Effie, again, my problem is that it's a late nectarine and it just gets hammered by brown rot because the inoculum is so high at that point. But no, these both seem to be pretty cracking resistant. I mean, of course, finish is always a problem on nectarines in the Southeast, but.
Any other questions? I wanted to ask about the red in the flesh peach. I don't think you talked about it, but it was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Go back there to, where is my.
Huge, size-wise.
Oh, yeah, that one actually, it's a high acid yellow, and is too tart sometimes, but it has kind of like a tie-dye look almost. The problem with that red in the flesh is getting it to be consistent, from year to year, that sometimes, you open the peach and it has like this really cool color, which I think, like a tiger or a tie-dye or something, and then like sometimes it's just a ring around the outside. But we did send that out for evaluation with Gardens Alive for kind of a homeowner type, because I think it's such a cool looking peach that it can't go into the burn pile, but probably not for commercial purposes with that inconsistency. Mm-hmm.
What's the texture? Is it the dominant red or the recessive red where it has like a woody type of a texture?
Normal texture. I mean, this is kind of, it's a non-melting flesh clingstone peach, so it does have, it's not the freestone that I like, but it's not coming from that weird red source. It's just the red kind of bleeding in from the flesh. It's 100%, like purple blush on that one. So, which can be a bit challenging to know when these things are ripe too, with those very, very full flesh ones. It's nice to have it be like 85% where you can see if it's yellow background color, but. Well, thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you. I've got a small gift for you. Is it okay?